Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I am Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, it has a sponsor. What? Cheshire Impact. That name sounds familiar. Who are these guys? On a mission to help you maximize your use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. Now, my guest for today, very excited to introduce you. Very excited to even talk to him. And we talked last time and we couldn't stop talking. It was awesome. He is an international speaker. He's a startup advisor, founder and CEO of VisumCX, former CEO, I believe co-founder of Audits, author of Driving Demand, live from the mountains of Colorado, Carlos Hidalgo. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you, Casey?
Good, sir. How are you? This is awesome.
Yeah, it is. I think last time we spoke, we had said that we could have probably spent a few hours, going back and forth. So we'll have to make sure that happens in person sometime. But I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. That perfect conversation for a hike, right?
That's right. Yeah. There you go. Do some backpacking, get out in the woods. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's one of the reasons I moved to Colorado.
Well, yeah, absolutely. New Hampshire, not bad, but we don't have the gigantors that you have up there.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't take you 2 days to hike a mountain or an all-day excursion. You guys can do it in a day. So,
yeah,
a different kind of beauty is what I like to say. And I grew up in the Adirondack Mountains, not far from you, so I understand that. It's one of my favorite places on earth.
Absolutely, man. Come to think of it, next time we chat up, we should go on a hike, and we'll have the little microphones recording. And people hear like the breaking of branches as we climb up something, or the trudging through snow.
Sign me up. I'll do it.
The clinking of carabiners and ice axes.
That's right. And snowshoes.
That's it. Crampons, all that. Well, let's dive into the theme because while we brought you here, we are finding a lot of people were stuck. They'd go invest in some technology. Marketing automation is a good example. And they'd use it like MailChimp. Sorry, MailChimp. But they'd use it like a free tool. They'd use it like a lightweight tool, yet they've invested all this money, right, sometimes the time, and then never really fully utilized the thing. And so we realized they didn't have a roadmap. They didn't have a map for the hike. So we created one, and each month has been a different theme along this path. And really we're getting to the point where now we're rounding out that journey. So we're looking back and we're saying, okay, what's the best way to trudge through this thing? We've talked about getting to know your buyers, talked about aligning with sales, building out drip campaigns, all these different things in due course. But I wanted to talk to you and I know you've got you've got books on this. You've got a real good sense of how do we really make sure that this stuff happens, So I want to pass you here. This is the official Thor's hammer from the show. And, what kind of myths can you smash right up front? Can you, bogus strategy you've been hearing over the days, over the decades, really?
Yeah, I think, the first one, you nailed it, is technology is not your savior. Technology is not a strategy. And
I like that.
I have seen the same thing over and over. I saw an article not long ago of how to have a foolproof marketing automation strategy. Marketing automation, any technology is there to enable. And if you don't have a strategy, what you're going to enable most likely is chaos.
Right.
And, I think it goes back to, I believe it was Walker who published a study that showed only 3% of marketing professionals are stating they're getting the full value out of their technology purchases.
What percent?
3.
Jeez.
3%. So that is a staggering low number. I don't need to tell anybody that.
Yeah, that's basically no one. That's like a few crazy people.
Right. And I remember, going back early in my career where we didn't have this technology. So it's kind of been this California gold rush of, let's go buy this technology and we can do this and we can do this and we can do this. And then they buy it and it's like, oh, well, wait, how do we do that? And so what I always advise is define your strategy first.
Yes.
Based on what that strategy calls for, go select the technology that's going to best enable that. So one of the questions I get, seeing as we're talking about automation, is, well, what marketing automation solution should I purchase?
Right.
And my response is always, well, what do you want to do with it?
Yeah.
What is whether it's a customer retention, customer experience, customer acquisition strategy, it really depends because you may not need the heavyweights of Marketo or Eloqua. you may need something that is more nimble. So that's one myth, is technology is not a strategy.
I
The other
like
myth
that.
is that this stuff is easy. And I have seen executives, I have seen consultants in this space with this, well, we can go live in 30 days. Reality is, if you want me to build a landing page, put a web form on it, blast out to a bunch of names, yeah, we can probably do that in under 30 days.
Sure.
But that's not of any value.
Yeah.
To really understand your buyer, and actually buyers, because we know from CEB,
Mm.
they've done great research around this consensus era in which we live, to map out their buyer journey across all, perhaps up to 7 in B2B individual stakeholders, to understand all the individual biases, to create the right content that aligns to the buyer journey, and then develop that process.
Right.
Anybody who says they can do that in 30 days or 60 days, and quite honestly, even 90 days, has either never done it, is lying, or is trying to sell you something. And
Right.
so this idea that it's easy, and then right hand in hand with that is, we got to get this done quickly. We have to move fast. And I have a phrase that I talk with all of my clients about is, it's better to do this right than to try to do this right now. And it's one of probably the questions I get the most is, how do we speak to our executives? Because they want us to do this super fast, super quick, and get it out the door.
Right.
And that's that batch and blast mentality. And then probably the third myth, and I've actually been writing a lot, haven't published anything yet, but kind of putting all my thoughts on paper, is this whole idea that in B2B, marketing and sales alignment is the problem we have to solve. And as I continue to unpack that, what I'm really seeing is that marketing and sales alignment is a symptom of much greater problems.
Interesting.
Part of that is we don't have a common view of the buyer across marketing and sales. There is a disconnect on what roles each department should be playing in terms of the full customer arc and full journey. And we don't have common metrics or common incentives based on our jobs and engaging the buyer. So I think if you can bring those three together and solve for that, marketing and sales alignment happens. And I think we're spending far too much time trying to treat a symptom and not the root cause or not the root problem.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, because I bumped into this where it almost like those two things we've talked about here, the idea of the technology. I love that technology is not a strategy.
Right.
That almost goes hand in hand with just the idea of treating symptoms, symptomology or something, it's like, let's go after, this random symptom with this random technology. Meanwhile, it's not even really the problem.
Right.
Or it might be the symptom of a problem. Have you ever played hockey?
I used to play some pickup hockey when I was a much younger man.
Yeah.
Nothing formal, but I can skate and I had a stick.
Well, yeah. So the reason I bring it up, and people are like, how did you just go? Hold on, people. So I started playing pickup hockey when I got out of college, and all of a sudden my knee started hurting and I couldn't run anymore. And I was like, what's going on here? And that symptomology type medicine would say, chop off your knee, get a new one, or I don't know, take some drugs. Come to find out, a quick visit to a sports medicine guy tested your leg strength. Outside leg muscle, the one you use to do the skating, was like solid, makes you feel good. You're like, resist my hand. You're like, I can resist this all day. What do you got? But then he does the opposite muscle, the inside leg muscle. I got nothing for him at all.
Yeah.
Like I hadn't used that in years, right? And he's like, you've got an imbalance here that's pulling your kneecap. One muscle's tight, one's loose, and it's pulling that thing, and that's why it hurts. So all you got to do is strengthen that inner muscle, and you're good. And you don't have to chop anything off, And it was like, for me, it was like such a like if I'd gone for the symptom, I would be in surgery right now,
Yeah. And it's interesting you bring that, because I had a sports guy that I worked with, and he would always say, the point of pain is not where the injury started, it's where it stopped.
Oh, whoa.
And so when we think about that, you referred to, trying to solve a problem with a certain technology. We also do that with tactics. And so when we think about from a marketing perspective, and I just had this, I was just at a client earlier this week and we were
Yeah.
talking about this channel. I said, in our consumer lives, when we're making a big purchase, so we're purchasing an automobile.
Sure.
We go online, we talk
Oh
to
yeah.
friends. I'm the kind of guy that if you're pumping gas and you're driving the car that I'm looking at, I'll walk over to you and be like, hey, I know this may be a little weird, but do you like your car? I'm thinking about the same one. In our minds, we don't go through this idea of I'm on a digital channel and now I'm in a word of mouth channel.
Right.
But yet, as marketers, we treat our buyers that way. Like we have to have a social strategy, a web strategy, a digital strategy. But
Right.
buyers are multi-channel. So we should develop a multi-channel strategy, which includes all of those different tactics in a way that kind of surrounds those buyers, or if you're doing ABM, those specific buyers in the account with our core message. And that message and that interaction needs to be seamless across those channels.
It feels like the barn door swung a little bit where we got digital and we got more and more digital. We got automated. We got all this digital stuff. And when you're thinking about trying to track and even something more advanced, multi-touch tracking, we give all this credit to different emails and digital touches. But, I just came back from Dreamforce, and sitting down and having a salad with someone can be so powerful for that
Yeah.
relationship, for business, for future work together. It's like, how do you even, and you can go log that, I guess, in Salesforce, but it's almost like we've gone so digital because it's scalable that we forgot that there's these untapped in-person other channels, to your point, that might have played the biggest. We met, we bonded, we're really going to work together. Doesn't matter how many emails I do or don't send you, we're going to work together, or maybe not, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
how do you include that in there?
Well, we still, at the end of the day, we still sell to people. We still
Yeah,
sell and we market. Just because we cross the threshold of our businesses at 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever time you show up to the office, doesn't mean we automatically go robotic.
true.
My good friend, and I'm sure you've met or know Brian Carroll, who kind of pioneered this years ago with the lead gen for the complex sale book.
Oh,
He's
okay, yeah,
doing
I
a
know
lot
the
of
book. Yep.
groundbreaking work around empathetic marketing. And so what we have to understand is, and CEB has also done some really good research around motivations of buyers. And one of them is, am I going to get fired? Or what's the fear, that whole fear factor, not the
Right.
show, but the reality of what is that factor of if I make this purchase? I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing more consensus buying is I want to make sure I'm covered, that I'm not the only one
Right.
on the line. But at the same time, we have to understand that sometimes buyers just have bad days, right? You've got in an argument with your significant other, or you spilled your coffee on the way to work,
Never
or
happens.
right, you got that other coworker who's playing political games, or you didn't get the
Mm,
promotion, whatever that is. And I think we have to start to humanize, or at least understand on the other end of that communication is a human being who thinks, who feels, who emotes, and really wants to have an experience with the vendor that they're going to buy from. So it's not just about how targeted is our content, because sometimes it comes across as so robotic. We just launched with a client this week, and one of the things that we had talked about from a content perspective is let's write our content that a seventh grader could understand
mm,
exactly what
yeah.
and that's not to demean their buyers, but we kept pushing that out there with this idea of let's get away from these big $10 words and just bring it down to a human level.
Right. I did a webinar 2 days ago, and even seeing it call the webinar and the emails promoting it just felt kind of
Yeah.
so dry these days, and
Uh-huh.
so what we did is we used the Zoom meeting kind of like this one, and people could show their faces or not. It was almost like a meeting. I still had the power to mute everyone when the time came, but we had one of the guys on our sales team who was joining it. He played guitar as like the opening music while people were getting their seats,
Oh, that's
We
awesome.
were all on video. It was super silly, and it became a panel discussion. And it
Yeah.
just felt so much better than, at least for me, but for other
Sure.
people, they gave us feedback that it was just, thanks for something different and fresh, not that slide death.
Exactly. Death by PowerPoint.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hear a lot about B2H, be to human, right? Or
Sure.
really it's human to human. But it's a good point that, understanding that they may just have had a bad day or something could be affecting them, and maybe you can't necessarily measure it, but one of the things you can do is bring it down to their level. I like the idea of that, the writing at the 7th grade level. I mean, what is Harry Potter? Is that, I think that's at like a 6th
You
or
know,
7th grade level, right? It's
that'll
not too
be
hard.
that'll be a question I'd have to ask my wife and oldest son because I've just watched the movies. I haven't
You
read the.
never read it?
No, I
Oh,
watched
you
the movie.
cheated.
And I did cheat, yes. And I'm being told all the time, oh, the books are so much better.
So much better.
I'm like, I will take your word for it.
Well, they are. And I remember just breezing through I think I was in the college at the time, so I wasn't super young, but yeah, I guess the words just flowed.
Mhm.
Uh, but the contrast to that, there's a really cool guy who writes in the financial space, and I'll have to look him up. I totally miss on the name right now, but he writes these really cool theoretical concepts,
Hmm.
and reading one of his blog posts is one of those things where you have to, like, I'll go get a dictionary for some of the words, and I have to like read it like 3 times. Now, he's not necessarily writing for, maybe he's just writing for a different audience, but
Right.
but I have to really stretch myself to get those concepts. It's fun, but at the same time, I don't read it voraciously because it's such an energy burden, as
Right.
opposed to what you're talking about, where, don't make that the thing, that the friction point is the fact that they know they're going to have to read your white paper 3 times to get the point.
Yeah, and I think you bring out a really good point. Is who is that individual writing to? If he's writing to economists and CPAs, he's probably using language that they all understand.
Right,
And
right.
it's interesting. My younger brother is not in B2B marketing. He's actually a pastor of a church in Denver.
Oh, no kidding.
So one time we were together and I got a call and I was on the call and I hung up and he said, I'm sure whatever you said made sense, but all I heard was wah, 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 wah. He's not in my space. And
Yeah.
if he came to my blog and he one time said, no offense, but I don't even follow your Twitter stream. He's like, because I started and I'm like, I have no clue what he's saying. He's not in my space. And
Right.
so I'm not writing to him. So I think that gets back to how well do we know our buyers and our customers. And it's not about what I want to say, it's what do they need to hear.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
And at what point do they need to hear it so it becomes relevant and we can move from brand, which tells that story, to customer engagement or even a buying process where now I'm trying to strike up a dialogue.
Yeah, that was really interesting what you said there. By the way, I say interesting a lot. I'm going to create like a tip jar, so every time I
Yeah,
say
there
it,
you go.
that I'm gonna probably give it to somebody. I don't know. But what you said was not what I need to say, but what they need to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we get so caught up, when we do content audits, I hear a lot of, oh, we have a ton of content. Well, the content is all about, well, we do this and we do this and our solution does this. And I'm seeing it even on the B2B sales front.
Sure.
Yes. Hey, our product does, do you have 20 minutes to sit for a demo?
Right.
Okay, you are just telling me that you don't understand what I do I got one today on data science.
Hmm.
Data science tool. Well, if you spent 5 minutes looking at my profile and looking at our company, you would know we are not a prospect for you. You would
Right.
know that we are not a target for you.
Right.
So I think really getting that understanding, both on the marketing and the sales side. And if I always talk about, especially in the context of demand gen, let's help our buyers make the most informed decision possible.
Yeah.
Whether or not they buy from us, which is a real mind shift, especially for salespeople, because I want everybody to buy from me.
Yeah.
The reality is, I don't know a sales rep alive who's got 100% hit rate or close rate. And so if I can be the one that facilitates that buying process and even post customer, that if I can facilitate that customer experience as an account manager, I'm going to have a customer. There's a good chance, the chances of me retaining that customer,
Mm.
expanding that share of wallet, go up exponentially.
This makes a lot of sense. whether or not they buy from us. Being there. We've often said, even at Cheshire, like our why is just to teach a better way.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes we'll get pushback from sales saying like, yes, well, we don't want to teach too much, but those people don't get it. It's no, we do. We teach and teach and teach, but the more you'll learn, the more you'll realize you don't know.
Right.
So, I've often said when we teach, we win, because really, we all win. It's like win, win, win. Because you're there just providing that information, and they're like, thank you for telling me that and teaching me that. Can you help me do that?
Well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, a lot of our clients, they all have day jobs. They don't have time to go out and do it themselves. And I firmly believe if I'm informing you and giving you new things to think about, because I think if we go back to that, typical, what are the stakeholders, all the stakeholders involved in a customer arc, if we realize that some of them come in and out, if some of them are there throughout, but their mindset changes based on where they are, whether it's a purchase or post-purchase. If I can be the one that continue to inform you on how to do your job better and improve your organization, the likelihood of you continuing to buy from me goes up exponentially.
Right.
Even if I am the highest cost vendor. And I have won deals hands down where I've been told, you're 2 to 3 times higher than competition.
Sure.
You took the time to help us frame our needs and then showed us how those needs are causing problems and how we can solve for that. And so I challenge marketers and salespeople to say, you ought to be able to talk about your customer's world and what you can offer or what your industry is doing without ever mentioning your product, service, or company name. And that's a tough thing for a lot of organizations and a lot of sales reps and marketing people to be able to do.
It kind of flips the script a little bit. It reminds me of things like the Challenger sale, or just telling people, too many people that do these discoveries, hey, let's go find out your problems. And sometimes you already know what their problems are. Hey, we've heard this and this and this. Is that something that you've been dealing with? Yeah, it is. Okay, tell us more. Tell us more about this. That balance of not always, because I've bumped into some people that by the time we chat with them, they have like discovery fatigue. They've told everyone their problems, but those people weren't actually, to what you described earlier, where you're listening and you're framing and you're helping them. They were just listening. They were like, hey, tell us your problems. And great. Buy our tool. Like there's no thinking in between hearing the problems and then telling them what the solutions are.
Well, and I think, and I would even back it up further, and I'm kind of stealing this from Jim Keenan, but Jim talks about identifying the need. So getting back to your sports injury, the problem was your knee.
Yeah.
The need was to strengthen your muscles.
Yeah.
And so, I all the time get calls of, hey, we need to do some customer. We don't have insight into our customers. So that's a big problem because we can't do this and this. Well, the need is, what they're really saying is, I need to get to know my customers better. The problem is, because I don't know my customers, I don't know what content to write, I don't know what programs to launch, I can't define a strategy, so on and so forth. So if I was only going to solve for the problem, I put together a content architecture. Their need is to get closer to their buyers and their customers.
Yes. Now, what do people present with? They present with symptoms, right?
Yeah.
The smart ones will maybe have that another layer down below. Like they were saying, we need to know your buyers better. But oftentimes they'll come at you and say, well, I don't know what I should write. Or even worse, we write all the time and no one reads it.
Right. Yeah. The tree falls in the forest and no one's around. Does anybody hear it? Yeah. Absolutely. Because I call it because marketing. We're doing it because that's what our role calls for. Because
marketing. I bumped into that a couple of years ago, upstate New York, large client, big piggy banks. We're talking about the idea of nurturing and sending out good content and content that answers questions or speaks to them. And they brought out their braggadocious content piece. And they said they had paid an attorney in New York City, who apparently was $1,000 an hour, and full stop, in the wrong job. That sounds great.
Yeah, right.
But, they paid him $1,000 an hour to write this white paper. And the thing was, no kidding, 27 pages long. So I'm like, what is this guy's word per minute? I can't imagine the zeros on the contract to write this thing. So I was like, that sounds great. What questions did this answer for your buyer? Or what was the thing? And all the heads started slowly going down, because they realized they just created it to create it.
Yep.
And to your earlier thing, what they wanted to say, not necessarily what their buyer needed to hear.
Exactly.
Ugh.
Exactly. So it's foundational. And, I think part of it is it's hard, again, going back to the myth smashing, it's hard to do.
Yes,
It's hard to do because we have to
it's hard to do.
constantly keep pace, and we have to constantly really make sure that as our buyers or our markets change, we keep pace with that and continue to update those.
How do you do that? I mean, I hate change. Change in my pocket, change in the market,
Well,
change in life.
You've probably seen this with your organization. Most of what we do with our clients is change management. So
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, as human beings, we despise change. I heard a client the other day say we do really well to talk about it. It's the applying the change that we really struggle.
Talk
And
is
so
cheap.
when we think about taking a step back, and so let's take your client of that content factory idea.
Yeah.
I'm just going to crank out content. And a lot of organizations are doing that, or that because marketing. When you say, wait a minute, stop, let's gain insight into your buyer. Let's understand their buying process. Marketing is having to build some muscle memory from muscles they've never used before.
Right.
And then when you say to sales, we need you to shift your paradigm from pound product down the throat to continue to diagnose and what I call informational selling, where I'm going to continue to collect information from you. And then in exchange for that, I'm going to give you information on how you should think about it, solving your need or addressing your need. Oh, and by the way, I've got this product and service that when you give me the permission, I'll finally show it to you on how. And that's kind of the close, the icing on the cake, that now this is how I can do this for you. But Jill Rowley talks about being that information concierge. And I think it's such a great term where I'm going to help you qualify and quantify your problem. That is a change, fundamental change from the way most marketing departments run and most salespeople run. Add on top of that for marketing now, CEOs are looking at us to be growth engines for organizations. We're having to engage further or more across the journey than ever before. We're being asked to drive customer experience in many respects. And sales is having to adapt to a very informed, tuned in, always on buyer. I remember back in the day when I first started selling, I was the gatekeeper to information. If the buyer wanted information, they had to come to me.
Yeah.
Now, I need this. That's it.
Just a phone, man.
Find out about you, your company. I can go to Twitter and LinkedIn, say, has anybody worked with VisumCX? What was that like? I don't need a salesperson.
Yeah.
So that salesperson actually needs to be, that Sherpa that kind of guides, directs, helps. And then once we have the ability to do that, and I think that's why you see so many studies that talk about salespeople missing quota. I know about your product already. As a matter of fact, and I'm sure you see this, I get a lot when I first get a call from an unknown, never before engaged with prospect. I get, hey, we're looking at you, this one, and this one. They've already made their short list.
Yeah.
That's a change for salespeople.
Right.
We want to go, well, product demo, this, short list, RFP.
Yeah.
It's just not that way. So that's what I mean in change management. We're fundamentally having to learn how to work productively again.
Interesting. Change management. The fact that they jump right from, it's not even a discovery, and they probably seen a demo video if you have one. Mm-hmm. The question then, tell me the difference between you and you.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, nice to meet you. Hey, tell me the difference between you and your biggest competitor. What is the skinny and no sales BS? Like, what is the actual difference between you and you? And what's funny with me, sometimes I'll be at a convention and I'll say, like, I'll meet some vendor, and finally when their idea clicks, like I understand what they're selling or what this thing does.
Yep.
Like, how much?
Yeah.
Like, wait, is that a qualified? Does that mean you're like at the end of the process? No, I'm not even going to go through the process until I fit how much you fit into. Well, we talk about that after a couple calls, and okay, well, I appreciate it. I'll catch you later.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just such a flip. I'm shopping. I'm curious if this thing's close to my, my threshold, hey, can I test it? Can I do a little test here? Put my toe in the water and just try it out for 3 months and see if it's a fit or not. How much is that going to cost? It's going to cost you $1,000. Cool. Let's try it. Why not?
Right.
It's going to cost you $100,000 this year, or minimum purchase price is $25,000. Okay. Maybe later. I'm not really, that's going to be a longer process, more decisions to make.
Sure.
It's so interesting how that is. And just the experience of my, as you, to your point, so you think about how you like to buy, and we should be better at selling how we want to buy,
Well, and I think what you experience is if you say, well, how much? And it's, well, we can have, we need to get so-and-so on the phone.
We can talk. Yeah.
What you're telling that vendor is, no, I'm driving the process.
Yeah.
And so
that's right.
I cringe when I hear organizations say, well, we have a very defined sales process. I would love if B2B buyers had a very defined buying process, but I have yet to hear a B2B buyer say I'm in the sales accepted lead stage of my buying process.
Yeah, it's true.
So it would be awesome if it was as linear as Serious Decisions has told us it is. It's not. Now,
shots fired.
Well, not necessarily. I'm a believer in that we manage that for an internal perspective, but there is a real danger to an organization that equates the waterfall to their buying process. And what you just talked about, when you go to a vendor at a show and ask how much, they should just be saying, okay, I've got my measurement, and that's where I think the waterfall is really good for. I know how to measure the effectiveness of my programs from a conversion level.
Right.
What Casey is now telling me is I'm like potentially want to buy today. And what that rep is doing when he's saying or she's saying, well, we got to have a call or we need to do this, is saying, I don't give a shit about your buying process.
I really don't care.
I've got my sales process.
Yeah.
And guess what? The buyer says, okay, fine, I'm out. We don't care about sales process. If I walk onto a car lot and I know what car I want to buy, don't sit there and try to sell me. As a matter of fact, I had that experience. I sent an email to 4 dealers. I knew exactly the automobile I was going to buy. And I said, this model, this color, these features. And then at the bottom, I said, and if you email me back trying to upsell me additional features, I will delete your email and you're out. And I told them, here are the 4 dealerships.
Wow.
2 of them emailed back and said, well, have you thought about adding this and this? And
no.
delete. And so again, they're trained.
Yeah.
Upsell, do this. We do the same thing to our B2B sales reps. And so it's a fundamental change to clue in to say, here are the buying signals. Feel free to ask questions.
Yeah.
So if you came to me and said, well, how much is it going to be? I would say, hey, here's a range. I'd really like to better understand your needs. So instead of just throwing out a flat fee, but here's a range that is typical for what you're looking for. But we could probably customize a little bit better unless you just want the standard vanilla out of the box proof of concept.
Right.
Now I've addressed your issue, your need. And by me saying we could do a little bit, if we got on the phone for half an hour and understood, or let's step to the side and unpack that. Now I can customize something to you. I'm still showing that I'm going to give you what you want, but there's 2 options for you. The out of the box vanilla or a little bit more customized proof of concept. Which do you want?
Right.
It's not back in your court because the buyer determines what they want. And we're not going to disrupt our buyers anymore. There's this idea of disruptive selling or disruptive marketing. Do you like being disrupted? I don't.
Hell no.
Yeah, nobody does. But we think we can do it to our buyers.
Right. It's so weird. It's like we forget that H in the B to H. We forget that human side. Then, we can treat marketing. We can go that too far because we're not talking to the person necessarily and forget it's just a number on, to your point, a waterfall, a number on a spreadsheet. It's actually a person. And that's where your unsubscribes come from too, is when we forget you're sending junk. They have a way of voting with their finger, and just sending that thing out there.
We're reporting it to LinkedIn when we get the social sell.
All the time, man.
Yes.
You're going on a rant. You're just going to take me on a tangent. I get these messages, and sometimes it's from a CEO, and I read back like, did you outsource your social? Did you outsource your LinkedIn? Is there somebody else doing this for you? Because this is really bad. I had two recently. The top, like, the worst possible, he said this, hey, I thought you might be curious. And then his response said, well, I really wanted to send out custom messages to everyone. And like, there's nothing custom about that message you sent me. This is the worst thing ever. And it's like almost like a Facebook message, where I've learned just don't get involved in the argument. Whereas LinkedIn, I haven't taught myself. I'm like, I kind of want to just call this guy and be like, this is the worst ever. But, I don't know.
My favorite was a former colleague, still a colleague, but former teammate over at Annuitas. His name is Jason. And he got an email from somebody on LinkedIn promoting their personalization software. And the message started with, hey, Bill.
Yes.
I'm like, really? How good is your personalization? So, yeah, we have to be careful in what we do and how we do it. And I think it's there's a difference between social selling and social stalking for sure. Social
blasting, it's the same old blasting. You mentioned one thing earlier about, we were talking about the buyer driving the process. It's so cool, by the way, for me to just say something, not even knowing what I'm talking about, and then you were able to like dissect it and say what you're describing here is you're controlling the process. And I thought you're so right. And sales is often trained to not let that happen. Don't let your buyer control your sales process. You hear that a lot. And to this whole point we've just been talking about, that's not necessarily a good thing, because I don't even know what product that was that didn't play well with me on the pricing. You got to simplify. You got to be able to say, well, it's $100 a user, or that's the vanilla, to your point. And then there's this other thing. There's more. We can talk about it. And I go, okay, cool. I got a good sense for it, but it's all about controlling it. It's almost like sales needs to be able to plan, or marketing too, plan for the craziness that is. Maybe there's like certain touch points. Instead of baseball being like first base, second base, third, it's like first, third, home, second, I win. It's like have you ever seen that graphic where it shows like what we think, or what Serious Decisions thinks is the buying process? It's a straight line with milestones.
It's all the squiggly.
Yeah, it's a squiggly line thing. It's like classic. But,
it is.
But then people go like, that's cool. It's true. We all laugh at it. But then how do you really plan for that? But I wonder if there's these like milestones you just got to be able to understand, so if somebody does ask for a price at the very first, meeting, how do you do that?
There's a couple of things. I think part of what, and so I'm now going to flip and perhaps defend the sales rep at the trade show, because as I've told clients before is we want to qualify, but we also want to disqualify.
Yeah.
If my ideal client is it has revenue of north of $500 million, has an employee count of over 750 employees, and is US based. Let's just say that's the very high level account criteria. Do I really want to talk to somebody who has 25 million, 75 employees, and is in Europe?
Right.
I don't, no offense to that person, but I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to waste my sales reps time. So there's some of that going on. In terms of that buyer, and I've actually used that graphic. I put it side by side with the funnel, and then I put it next to what the real buying journey looks like. You have to take that and you have to multiply that by as many stakeholders as you have in your buying. Right. So how do you then chart? And I do know groups that say, no, we can do that. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, you can't. So whoever's right, whoever's wrong. What I believe is we should at least look at the buying milestones. Starting with the trigger event, or what Google calls that zero moment of truth. And Lowe's hardware store is doing a great ad campaign now, right? That moment when you realize whether it's your refrigerator isn't big enough, your carpet needs replacing, that's that zero moment of truth. So something happens in an organization, and it may be a slow burn where somebody somewhere says, we need to do something. So now they're pushed into the buying process. So then from the moment of trigger, what happens at each and every stage? Do they start? And that's one of the things when I do interviews for our client customers is I'm saying, so what did you do next? And so they're like, well, we went out to Google and we started to gather information. Then we talk to our peers, and then we went to industry sources. So we're mapping, trigger event, collection of information, and then they said, well, then we had to define our internal requirements, and so this is what we used. So we're then mapping that milestone, the actions that happen at each of that milestone, and then what groups were involved or what roles were involved at each of those milestones. And what's really interesting, when you do it that way, you start to look and say, wow, so the CFO was involved at the beginning. But then when we started to see that the customers collected information, defined requirements, the CFO is gone.
Right.
It's not the director of finance. So that changes the game for sales, who's always going, no, I got to get to the C level.
Yeah.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Because the real influencer could be at the director level.
Right.
And if you win their heart, then you're going to win the deal. So it really is a great way to define that. But I believe if you try to map, let's say you have 5 different buyers that represent 5 different roles in the organization, all with their singular view and their own bias, good luck trying to map every individual motion that those people take and then trying to write content for that. You would need an army just of data scientists to do that.
Yeah.
And your content library will be ridiculously large.
Ridiculous. Yeah. Oh, AI, big data. It'll be fine. Just buy this tool.
Oh, there we go. You can apply AI and machine learning. I do believe in it, but
yeah,
I'm a big believer, and I believe you can just get the same result if you do the buying milestones and really address that and understand that. And I can assure you, it's not MQL, SAL, SQL.
What do you like to use?
Interest, consideration, evaluation, decision. It's not 4 steps. I wish it was. If it was, our jobs would be so much easier.
Do you even assign labels? Because I know you've said like the waterfall makes it helpful to track and measure.
I do on the back end, sure. Yeah, we have qualification model that we follow internally. The buyer never sees that.
Right.
And I don't have a standard model that I say this is the buying process. I've worked with some clients where we define the milestones and there's 4 steps. I've worked with some where we have 12 steps. It all depends on what we hear from their customers when we say, so then what did you do next? Who was involved? What steps were taken?
So does it shift from being like a journey or a trail to being more of like a choose your own adventure, but make sure you've hit all the dots, or here are the dots on your way to eventually, like how do you graphically, mentally set that up?
Yeah, that's a great question.
So
once you define that, then you can start to build your content architecture. And I think that's some of the mistakes that companies have made, especially with automation, when they build score models and they say, oh, well, every white paper gets 30 points. Well, quite frankly, I don't care if you take a white paper. What I want to know is where in the journey did you take that? So when you build a content architecture that's aligned to your customer's buying pattern or customer journey, you may say this white paper is going to be placed further down in a late stage nurture, which aligns to, let's just say, vendor identification stage of my customer's buying journey. So that when they come in and select that piece of content, perhaps on their first visit, I now can then decipher about where they are in their buying process.
For sure.
And so I'm assigning the score based on the action taken as it relates to the journey versus saying every ebook gets 20 points.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's too not granular, the opposite. It's too high level to then say 30 points. But to your point, that white paper might be, if it's late stage content, it's all about things that happen typically right before a purchase. Then if that happens right away, then maybe they're toward the end of the whole thing. Maybe
and I need to adapt to that. And if I'm finding that higher score value and they meet the demographic and the firmographic piece, well, then they may necessitate a sales follow-up after their first visit. I'm not saying that will happen all the time. That's probably more the exception than the rule, but it's something we would need to consider.
So you're not throwing out the fact there is a path. They are walking some kind of path, but they're hitting milestones maybe in different orders, or is it still there's a particular order they're going to hit those things in typically?
Every customer is going to do what they do.
Yeah.
What I want to know is if they take this action, this, then we can then read the signs and read the tea leaves and see
Yeah.
we're in this stage of that process. If they take this action and engage with this content first, we probably know with fair amount of certainty that they're in the early stage. So what I'm doing is I'm creating this content model that on the back end is all strung together, but I'm giving it all to the buyer and the customer up front so they can pick and choose however
Right.
they want, versus this, I'm going to nurture by sending you an email every 2 weeks. And so you're very limited on the content that you can engage with, because now I'm dictating that. And even if you respond, I have this arbitrary, inane touch policy that we've developed. This is, I can only email you every 2 weeks. How's that for a conversation?
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you flip that on its head? How do you blow that up? No more nurturing?
No, I think I don't believe that drip is true nurture. I think nurture is predicated on buyer behavior.
Interesting.
So if you and I are talking, think about let's just say if you and I were emailing back and forth and we're having this great dialogue and we're prepping for this show, and you send me an email and then I send you back a question and I don't hear from you for 2 weeks. I'm thinking, Casey, are you there? Are we still doing this? And that's what we do to our buyers, because we get a drip. So for me, if you come to my site and start to engage, and hopefully we have a content hub or something dynamic, and so they're binging on my content, and then I send that email that says, hey, thanks for accessing. Here's that piece. So we know you've binged on it, but we're also going to fulfill it. If you click on that and then come back to my resource center the next day and consume more content and request more information, am I supposed to just let that lie fallow for 2 weeks?
Right.
That experience. So all of my nurture should be predicated on your behavior as the customer and what you're requesting of me. So if you're asking for more 24 hours later, I'm going to send you more 24 hours later, because that's what you want.
Right.
It's not what I want, it's what you want. So, and at the same time, if you drop out, then yeah, I may put you into a drip track that says every 2 weeks, I'm going to send you a newsletter just to keep my name in front of you.
Right. It's almost like the idea of the top of mind versus actually nurturing someone in the sales process is
right.
It's different, but we're just creating, sometimes people just create one, and then we're nurturing you every 2 months, or even I've seen month to month.
Yeah.
And that might be great if they've already made the decision, you want to stay top of mind, or they've said, call me back in 6 months. That might be a nice way to just stay top of mind. But to your point, if they're binging here, binging there, you're not having a conversation.
Right. And I believe that's what really good B2B customer and buyer marketing does. It evokes a conversation. I do believe there's a place for story, especially in brand content.
Yep.
But I think when it comes to, are they buying? Are they already customers? Are they looking to get more out of my product or service? Are they looking to buy more? I want to strike up a dialogue, and I have to do that through multiple channels.
Interesting. I was at a Drift conference right before Dreamforce, and they were talking about how, nurture or even email is often about having a conversation later. It's like all about the talking later and emailing later. Fill out this form. We'll follow up later. Right. Versus maybe the now. Hey, to your point, people binge, man. Netflix, maybe you're really good content. If you didn't write boring stuff, they're binging now when they have the time, and maybe they'll check back later with a little reminder. But it's not this sort of on-off Boolean type research over several weeks.
Exactly. Yeah. When I'm wanting to buy something, I'm on it, and I want a fast response. I would much rather chat with somebody online than pick up the phone and have to go through this. And so I think, it's up to us to be as marketers and vendors to be as responsive as possible. And if email is the best you can do right now, then make sure that you're triggering it based on the buyer's behavior, not on some cadence that somebody drew up because you think it's what's best.
Right. It's almost like the cadence of least resistance. Oh, if you email them once a month, they might not get too mad about it. Yeah, but they might not do anything else about it either. They might have already done all their binging on some other software and bought that thing by the time they get your next email.
Exactly. So I think this is why it's not easy.
Not easy. So, do you have any tips on the change management side? Any sort of strategies you've seen work? You're here now and you need to get here. Maybe it's the CSI we created or any of the things you learned today.
Yeah, and this part of what I wrote about in driving demand is you have to understand just like your buyers, you're working with people internally.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in what Chip and Dan Heath talk about is look for the bright spots. So the fastest way to change is to capitalize on what's been working. Brent Adamson from CEB talks about also recognizing that everybody's always had the best of intention. So when you go in and you start to change things to say, well, this isn't working anymore, or who did this, you should say to your people, look, we've done a great job. Everybody's done the best they can do, but we need to change things, and here's why. So I think first and foremost, understanding why the change.
Right.
Our buyers have changed. Our industry has changed. We have to change as a vendor.
Right.
Making sure that everybody feels bought in and has ownership of that process. And then also from an executive perspective, realize and expect failure along the way, learn from that failure, and also realize that oftentimes you're going to have people that no matter how good the change sounds at the end are going to resist.
Right.
It's fundamentally, and at the end of the day, what I have found is fundamentally it's fear of if we make these changes, what happens to me? Or just a fundamental lack of understanding. And so if I have that fear, and that's disguised different ways, you have people who will just, very, very clearly opt out and say, I can't do this, I'm gone. Sometimes you'll identify those people. And one of the clever ways is they make statements instead of ask questions. Or they're doing the behind the scenes kind of just sowing a little bit of discord and doubt among the team to slow it down. But at the end of the day, it's just about people. And we've got to understand the human element, and we've got to have empathy with our people internally. And then lastly, this thing takes time. To change the culture of an organization takes 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years. It's a great reminder that it's a people. In the end, it's a people thing.
Yeah.
I said earlier, I hate change.
Yep.
So somehow we're expecting other people to change and not hate it or not find some just, knowing the why for it helps ownership. But yeah, I love that. Expect failure. It's more of a slow, consistent, steady change needs to happen. So it's not just the change of the month,
And as we were talking about it earlier, talking about hiking, one of the things I love to do when I hike, especially on a long hike, is every once in a while just stop and look back and be like, okay, we're higher here in Colorado. My wife and I were hiking on Saturday. We went on a 6-mile hike. And At one point we stopped and I'm like, look at how much elevation we've already gained.
Yeah.
So you're looking out and you're seeing these views. And I think sometimes we have to do that in our organizations when we're driving change. Is we have to stop and say, wow, look at all that we've done already. One of the things that I always look at is have the people we are working with, have they started to change their vocabulary around what we're doing? Have they adopted new words to describe? Is there a common focus? Those are change milestones that we should celebrate. Because if we say, well, we can't do anything, it's going to take 2 to 3 years, that's a long, hard slog.
Right.
Versus, hey, we won this battle, we've accomplished this, we're already seeing an uptick in whatever key metric we're measuring. That's cause to celebrate, and it motivates people to go for that next mile and that next stretch of change. And stop again. So you should have mini celebrations along the way when major things are accomplished.
That makes so much sense. Little water break, turn around and look at where you come from. And, sometimes if you're below in that tree line, in that tree cover, you have no idea how far you've come unless it's like a nice straight path. You can see through the trees maybe, but you come out to any of those little breaks where there's some rock and you're like, whoa, to your point, just to even remind yourself and everyone else how far you've come. That makes so much sense. And I think sometimes we're so determined to get to the top not take a break all the time, or we do our water break, but it's only just to refuel and not even reflect. We just
Mm-hmm.
keep on going, but you miss that part that you've actually.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun when it works.
Yeah, I'll say. No, this whole conversation is a lot of fun. My question is, like, who are you? Like, how did you get to the mountains of Colorado, this wise sage of B2B marketing and change and
Well,
data and all the things that you're doing these days?
the B2B thing happened quite by accident. I had sworn as a college student I would not follow in my father's footsteps and be a marketer. We see how that ended out.
Yeah, it went up really well, man.
I looked at several other careers, but pretty much out of college, I was started with a nonprofit in their marketing group.
Oh,
So,
cool.
have obviously 25 years later, it works for me. In terms of Colorado, we moved here about 8 years ago. It was a lifestyle move. We had spent some time in Dallas prior to that. I've never really lost my Northeast Adirondack roots. So I love mountains. We love the outdoors. Plus, we have family here in Colorado.
Nice.
So at that point, my oldest was going into his freshman year of high school. He's now graduated and has his own first real job.
Wow.
So we've been here for a while, but it was a great move. And as for me, I married to an amazing woman. I think we just celebrated 24 or 23 years.
Jeez, congrats.
So every year she renews her subscription. I feel very grateful.
And keep that churn to zero, man.
That's right. I have 4 amazing kids. The youngest is the only one left at home. I love the outdoors. And at the end of the day, I'm fortunate enough to love what I do. I love to help companies and help people transform what they're doing and drive effectual change. And that's our value. And we do that with our clients. We do that with our partners. And then what really drives us, what gets us what gets us getting up every morning and working is we're very involved with a nonprofit that works with single moms and widows in the Ateso region of Uganda.
Interesting.
Beauty for Ashes Uganda, and it just goes along with our value of transformation.
So Beauty for Ashes?
Beauty for Ashes Uganda, and it's all about long-term sustainability and empowerment through education.
How did you guys get it looped into that or find out?
My wife met the founder in a yoga class.
No kidding.
Saw the Africa tattoo and said, "So what's that about?" That was about 4 years ago. And so I go over once a year to see what's happening on the ground there. And my wife goes over 3 times a year.
Wow.
But there's something really moving when you see a 50-year-old woman who was told at 8 years old, you're not worth educating anymore. When you see her write her name for the first time.
Yeah.
It's just so moving and powerful. And they now say, I feel worthy. And so it gets into the whole reason Visum exists. If somebody said to me, what's your value in one word, I would say transformation. And so we're able to do that through that. And we give a portion of all of our profits to that organization. So all of our clients and partners we work with are also part of that ecosystem.
Huh. Now I want to talk about Visum, but tell me, so Uganda, what was it like the first time you went over there? I mean, I've never been to even Africa. I mean, I've been to some places, but
mind blowing. It was moving. It was emotional. I did my best to try to map my time on Twitter, but even as good as T-Mobile is over there, sometimes it took like 30 minutes for a picture to load.
Wow.
But again, when you're working alongside and seeing these women who many of them don't have husbands anymore, they've kind of been, just discarded as part of their culture. But when you see them start to believe in themselves and realize that they're worthy of love because they have a spark of the divine in them, and because they're upright and taking oxygen, they're worthy. And then you see them start to learn math and how to write, and you hear them say, I can now go to the market and not get cheated for the first time.
Yes.
they're making a life for themselves. And these women, you want to talk about entrepreneurs. These women are amazing. There was one village we were at where they're in a co-op, 60 women, and they started a goat farm.
Okay.
And so they had a few goats. They bred the goats. The goats obviously are populating. So they're taking some of the babies, selling the babies at market after they've weaned them. They've then built a goat house, which has space. So they're taking the goat droppings, and then they take the droppings to the market to sell for fertilizer.
Fertilizer, yeah.
And they're building these businesses, and now they're some of these women, because of the money they've made, are able to move out of mud huts and brick homes with steel or tin roofs. And you're sitting there and they're walking through their business plan with you, and you're like, I can learn a lot from you. So it was awesome. It was awesome. Just some of the happiest, most joyful people I've ever experienced. And so you learn a lot, and you come away with like, wow, the idea of like, I came to help, and you all helped me so much more.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Like we have one idea in our head, and then it makes such a difference. One of the things I found, I mean, I've been to like Iraq and some other places, was that really like the treatment of women is almost like the glue for society. If you have that, it can be so much stronger. If you don't, it's almost like, building a house with bricks with no mortar, right? It's just a shamble. And so it makes total sense. I mean, these women have been cast aside, but most of the team at Cheshire and other places, like that's such a great group of people. And I'm with you on being surprised by like, wow, the work ethic that can come out of folks that you would have no idea. And just a reminder not to judge people by cover, by anything,
Yeah. No, it's moving. You should come with us next time.
All right. When are you going next?
January, end of January.
I'll talk to the missus. We'll see what's up. But
the only downside is I'm flying home Super Bowl Sunday, and I told the director, it's like, are you insane? What are you doing? But small price to pay, and I don't think the Broncos are going to make it, so we'll be all right.
Well, I went to last year's Super Bowl, so.
Oh yeah, exactly. not a good one for you guys.
No, but you know what? You think it's like a once in a lifetime opportunity, and then the moment they lost and the green ticker tape came down instead of red and blue, I was like, I got to do this again. The highs were higher, the lows were lower, but it was like, I need to experience this when it's the red tape, when it's red and blue. So yeah, I don't know how they're gonna. But that's a good point. Do they get into the Super Bowl, and can you watch that from there? But
yeah, I'll be watching it in the air on the way home.
Yeah, I mean that was a cool experience, but this sounds even that next level deeper of just that feeling. And I wonder, did you found Annuitas, or were you part of the initial crew, or?
I was a co-founder.
Okay.
It was just two of us. We co-founded it. We grew it.
You grew an empire, B2B marketing empire.
Oh, wow. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Led it to 3 Inc. 5000s, had a good run. And then just at the end of 2016, it was killing me. It was killing my family.
Sure.
I had to realign my priorities and get back to, Brene Brown talks about cultivating what's important. And I had far too much cultivating my business and not cultivating my relationships. So I changed course, turned over the reins to their current CEO.
Smart.
Said I'm out, and had some time to reflect, had some time to figure out what I was going to do next. And here I am at VisumCX, and it's a whole different model, a whole different approach, same quality of work. And we're doing a lot of fun stuff. But
what is it? What? Just tell me about Visum then. I mean, what do you guys do there? What do you?
Yeah, we work with all kinds of clients. I mean, literally from Fortune 100 to startups. Part of what I work best when I don't have a same cut every day.
Agree.
It helps my ADD a little bit.
Totally.
But we really want to help customers enable, equip, and empower the customer experience. And we believe that starts internally with your employees. It's really understanding what is our brand value? What is our brand promise? And then how are we enabled and empowered to bring that to our customers in whatever role we're in? So if it's sales, if it's marketing, professional services, customer support. And so there's a whole list of things. I still, because of my background, I still have a lot of companies who want to start at that demand gen piece and getting customer insights. So we do a lot of that work. And then I've got a couple of other side things I'm doing. I serve on the board of a startup. I'm working on another startup with another couple of guys, writing my second book. So in all my spare time,
second book.
But yeah, it is. It's going to be a fun one. So it is a fun one. I'm really enjoying this one.
Is it a secret topic?
It's not. It's basically kind of, it's my belief kind of on my way out of annuitus and into Visum is we have fallen prey to this idea that there is, the American dream to achieve that. First of all, we define that by the number of zeros on our paycheck, bank account, our titles.
Totally.
Big house, white picket fence, and 2.5 kids and 2 automobiles.
Yeah.
Which is a total perversion of what it was meant to be.
Interesting.
And then to achieve that as Americans, we believe that we have to be that scarce resource and burn the candle at both ends to the point we almost wear it as like an identification.
Yeah, like a badge.
And so many of us, yours truly included, did that. And then at the end, we turn around and we realize that the people we supposedly were doing this for had told ourselves we were doing this for.
Mm-hmm.
The people that we asked to sacrifice so we could go pursue our professional dreams are so distant because we've put so much time and effort. And so it's really a book about how do we do that differently. So the goal is to have it out in spring of 2019. And so it'll be available on Amazon, and the title is going to be The Un-American Dream.
Interesting. Now, a question on that. Is that one of those things that we say when we get successful and that you needed to burn the candle at both ends to get there, but then you like getting successful is full of regret anyways, do you think? Or can you truly do it the other way and get there, you know?
I think you can do it the other way and get there because I did it.
Okay.
Yes, I had a lot of success at annuitus.
Right.
And I will forever be thankful for that. But I hit the reset button. With VisumCX, we hit the reset button. I didn't have, everybody thinks of this idea, oh, you own your own business, you must be so loaded. I actually
totally.
I put a post about that on LinkedIn.
Amen.
I put a post about that on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago where I was talking to a guy and his response to me was, well, easy for you to say, you must be rich. And I burst out laughing. I said, man, I'm many things, but rich is not one of them.
Right.
But I'm doing it now. And so, yes, I achieved success, but I literally had to hit that reset button and started from scratch. I didn't bring any clients with me. I didn't bring, so when I left.
Right.
And I was gone, and it was all good. And I needed to do it, but I remember sitting, not here in the office, one morning, actually write about it in the book, at my kitchen table, kind of saying, all right, so what do I do? What's next? And at the same time, I felt really serene in that I had made the right choice. And so I think it's a lot about setting expectations with both our partners, clients, and even our bosses and our executives. I think we have to set work-life boundaries, and I'm talking about that at a TEDx in November in Atlanta.
Nice. Okay, great.
And it's the book on we can do this differently, and especially when you have an experience going to another country like Uganda, and you see people who materially do not have what we have in America, right? Even something like a water bottle like this, they don't have.
Totally.
And you see the joy and the happiness. And then you compare that to where we are in our country.
With so much more.
We are the most prosperous material country in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And the amount of angst, the amount of aggravation and frustration and anger, everything is just staggering. And I think that's what Mother Teresa referred to when she talked about the poverty of the West. And so I just think there's a better way. I think we can be happy. I think we can achieve and obtain happiness. And it doesn't have to be because of how much we make or what title we have or what businesses we start. If we want to do that, that's great. But there's a better way to do that and preserve the relationships that we hold so dear.
That's awesome. How long have you been doing Visum?
Let's see, February of 2017. So what is that? 16 months, 18 months, something like that.
Coming up on your anniversary. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we're doing really well. We're having a great time doing it. I love it.
That's cool. So you actually then you have done it with Visum then to be able to say, let me do this thing differently. And it hasn't, floundered out. It's actually gone great doing it in the new way.
It's kind of insane.
Really?
Yeah. The clients we've been able to work with and the business we're getting and at the same time, I tell every prospect, here's how we work. This is who we want to work with. And this is why we should work together. If that doesn't fit your model, you're not going to offend me, but we're not the vendor for you.
What's your model?
And, my model is I want to work with people that I like.
True.
I want to work with people that have a shared valued system.
Okay.
People who truly want to drive effectual change in their organization.
It's awesome.
So if that's a Fortune 50, great. If that's a startup, that's great. But I am not, and I have boundaries. I'm not going to be the always on call resource that you can call day or night over the weekend when I'm out with my family.
Right.
But when I'm working, the same goes for my family, that's my boundary. Like I am working, I am here, I'm dedicated, I'm all in.
Yeah.
And obviously sometimes you have to maneuver that around. But that takes a lot of forethought and planning to say, yes, this time I can make that exception and make sure. But I was with a client this week and she said to me, because we were on a late call, it was an exception. We had to do a call to 7:45.
Sure.
And she said, I so respected the fact that you kept saying, okay, we have 10 minutes left. I have a hard stop at 7:45. So I asked her, I said, did you know what that hard stop was? She said, I had no idea. I said, I told my wife and son we were going to go out for ice cream. I was done the call. I said, and I wasn't going to go past 7:45 because, and I knew we could cover all the material in an hour and a half, and we did. So there was no reason to just stay on and banter and be like, oh, well, what about this? What about that? I could do that tomorrow.
Right.
Let's get done what we have to get done. And during that time, that 6:15 to 7:45, I was in my office. So my boundary, and my family understands this as well because we formed them together, was, hey, Dad's working. Right? He's working, Carlos is working, and we're going to go do our thing. But we know that boundary exists. And then at 7:45, boundary switched, phone goes away, email goes off. Now it's family time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you bumped into like Dan Sullivan or any of that? He's talking about, having free days and focus days and buffer days. And in the you shall not pass, right? The idea of if it's a free day and you plan those first to rejuvenate yourself, that's not work email, it's not a work book, it's your family, or it's the things that you enjoy doing. It's the hiking, it's the climbing, and it's not like, we're so tempted to just sort of pull up the phone and you're with your family, but you're not really, because you get that one email that happened to me in like Florida, on the beach with the pool, the kids are playing, and I checked, I got the one email, and it was stupid. It's some vendors. It was the most innocuous thing, but it made me so mad. And like the whole rest of the day, I was like thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's like, just don't do that, but separate. To your point, boundaries. It sounds like it'll be a really good talk. You said that's in Atlanta?
Yeah, it is. And I experienced that same thing. My daughter, when she was 17, it was the first time, much to my chagrin and embarrassment, first time ever I had not taken my laptop on vacation. And I told my team I was turning off my email on my phone. So day 2, she was 17 at the time. She's 19 now. Comes to me and says, Dad, thanks for not bringing your laptop on vacation. And so I appreciated that.
She noticed.
Yeah. And I said, I appreciate that, but I always worked before you woke up. And then she got me when she said, yes, but then you would spend the rest of the day thinking about what you worked on. And so they knew. dad was there, but not fully there. Like he wasn't present. And so again, I'm sure there'll be people who read this and say, this is a pipe dream. You don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've been in the client side. I worked for McAfee. I worked for BMC Software.
Sure.
If I could do those years over again, I would. I wouldn't change that. I learned more from those two organizations and my managers and my colleagues, which has enabled me to do what I do now. So those were great experiences, and I still keep in touch with a lot of them.
Oh, cool.
But I think the way I did it would be fundamentally different. And what I have found in this role, I am so much more highly productive and my work product is better because I have those boundaries.
Totally.
So it'll be fun. We'll see.
And that comes out next year, right?
Yes, hopefully spring. Right now I'm targeting March, maybe April, working with a good longtime colleague and dear friend who's going to be my copy editor. So she'll be able to take my mental dumping on paper and turn it into something glorious, hopefully.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. We'll have to have you come back and give an update. And
that would be great.
Talk about Uganda. I'll have to talk to you about that offline, but this has been awesome. I don't know if you looked at the clock, but time just warped by.
No, I saw that. I'm like, holy cow, where did this go?
I know. And that's a good sign that, this conversation that matters and things that it's fun to talk about. And thank you so much for coming on here and just, giving my brain a stir. I've got pages and pages of some great notes here. I've learned so much from this little conversation.
Well, I appreciate you having me. We're always welcome to continue conversation offline. It doesn't always have to be a show. I've really enjoyed getting to know you. And, I just appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit what's in this head of mine.
Absolutely. No, it's good. It's all gold in there. Just open up gold mine all inside there.
The check's on its way. Thanks.
Oh yeah. Hey, woo! The first check. Well, this is great, man. So thank you again. And so everyone listening, if you learned something from this and there's no way you couldn't have, guarantee, I bet you money on that, then share it with someone. Get that message to someone else. So it's not just, you in that silo learning something new, but share that with someone else. And we will catch you all next time. So this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. See you guys.